Welcome back. I love a good deep dive, and today's topic is one that's close to my heart. We're going to be talking about home,
Home.
but not just any home. We're going to be exploring what makes for the finest homes. And no, before you go there, we're not talking about square footage or thread count.
Right. It's much deeper than that.
We're taking our cues from a talk by Elder L. Whitney Clayton.
Oh, this is a good one.
He gave this talk at a general conference of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints back in 2011.
2011, yeah.
But honestly, what he had to say about creating exceptional homes, well, it really goes beyond any one specific religion or belief system.
I think you're going to find it's real universal.
And to kick things off, Clayton makes this point right at the beginning. The people inside a house, they're what truly make it stand out.
He says that the finest homes are those that reflect the image of Christ.
So not like literally having pictures of Christ everywhere.
No. He's talking about something much deeper. He's talking about homes where, you walk in and you just feel this warmth, this genuine connection, no matter what the furniture looks like or, what the address is.
Okay, so it's less about the material stuff and more about creating a home that's, I guess, spiritually and emotionally strong.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about building a home that reflects those core Christian qualities, love, kindness, forgiveness.
I can think of a few places where I've felt that, and it really is palpable, It's not something you can force. It's
Right.
like you can just sense the care and respect the people in that home have for each other.
It's authentic. And you know what Clayton points out?
What's that?
He says that even if you're the only one in your household who's consciously trying to build that kind of atmosphere, your effort still matters. Just like planting a seed, it can still blossom.
It can have a ripple effect, yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's say we're on board with trying to build one of these finest homes. Clayton makes this really interesting comparison to a temple, right?
Yes. He talks about how a temple needs a solid foundation.
And he's saying that the foundation of a thriving home is built on, well, in his words, God's commandments.
Yeah. But, I think we can broaden that out a bit.
Yeah, because that could feel a bit limiting to folks who don't share those specific beliefs.
Exactly. But when you really look at what those commandments represent, it's about things like honesty and integrity,
Compassion.
self-discipline, qualities that are valuable no matter what your background is.
I mean, who doesn't want a bit more honesty and integrity in their lives, right?
Exactly. These are like universal building blocks.
So it's more about living by a solid set of values, whatever those might be for you, that will really create that strong foundation.
Precisely. It's the difference between building on solid rock or building on sand. If your values are shaky, everything else is vulnerable.
Ooh, yeah, that's a powerful image.
Right.
It makes me think about all the times I've let myself get swayed by, what other people think, or those passing trends. But if you've got a strong set of principles guiding you...
You're less likely to get blown off course. You're anchored.
Anchored, exactly.
Clayton talks about this in terms of steady discipleship.
Which, to me, sounds like it's not just about knowing what's right, but about actually consistently doing it, even when it's tough.
That's it. He even uses the words firm, steadfast, and immovable. It's like you're building up this inner strength.
Oh, that moral muscle, yeah.
So you can face anything.
This reminds me of, elite athletes or artists or, really anyone who's mastered something. They all have this insane discipline, right?
Right, absolutely. It's that commitment to constantly improving.
And it makes you think, right? What kind of foundation are you building?
It really does. What principles are you truly committed to? What are you doing every day to strengthen yourself?
And Clayton actually gives some really specific ideas for how to do that.
He does. He talks about the power of studying scriptures.
Okay, let's talk about that, because I know for some people, scriptures might sound a bit, intimidating or maybe even irrelevant.
Yeah.
So how would you explain what Clayton's getting at there?
Well, he sees scriptures like the Bible or the Book of Mormon as blueprints for life. They're full of stories, right?
Right.
About families, about people facing tough choices, people messing up, people learning.
And it's not about taking every single word literally, right?
Not at all.
It's more about finding those universal truths that apply to all of us.
Exactly. It's like they offer a window into human nature.
And they can give us guidance for our own lives, too.
Absolutely. They're full of wisdom.
It's kind of like how people turn to self-help books or therapy these days.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's about gaining insight.
Yeah, and Clayton uses this interesting word, transform.
Transform.
He's saying that engaging with these texts can actually transform us.
And not just us as individuals, our homes, too.
Can you give an example? How would that play out?
Sure. Think about the story of the prodigal son in the Bible.
Oh, yeah.
It's all about forgiveness and second chances.
Mhm.
Imagine a family struggling with some kind of conflict,
Hurt feelings.
resentment. This story can give them a framework to work through that.
It gives them a shared language, a common set of values to draw upon.
Right.
And then Clayton was on to make this fascinating connection to the renovation of the Salt Lake Temple.
Oh,
I
yeah.
remember reading about that. Even this magnificent temple needed some serious structural reinforcements.
It did.
How does he tie that into our homes?
Well, his point is that even things that seem perfect on the surface
Mhm.
might need some updating, some strengthening to be truly stable.
So it's not about striving for some impossible level of perfection,
Yeah.
but just recognizing that we're all works in progress.
Exactly. We all need a bit of renovation every now and then.
It's an ongoing process. And you know what? This makes me wonder, what area of your life could use a little renovation right now?
Ooh, good question.
I'm asking myself the same thing. And on that note, we're going to take a quick break. But when we come back, we're going to explore how some seemingly small, everyday actions can actually make us incredibly resilient.
It's going to be good. Stay tuned.
That's such a good question to think about. And speaking of resilience, Clayton actually tells this really powerful story about his time in Paraguay that illustrates this whole idea.
It's a great story.
Tell me about it. What happened in Paraguay?
So this was back in 2002. Paraguay was hit with a pretty major financial crisis. And Clayton was meeting with a group of stake presidents.
Stake presidents, these are like regional leaders in the church, right?
Yeah, they're responsible for a lot of congregations,
Mm.
and they were all trying to figure out how to help their members.
Yeah.
People were really struggling.
It must felt so heavy. Like, how do you even offer support when everyone's facing such intense challenges?
Yeah, it was a tough time. And in that moment, Clayton asks the stake presidents a really thought-provoking question.
What was the question?
He says, think about the members in your stakes who consistently do the following. Pay a full tithe, donate generously to those in need, actively serve in their church community, make an effort to connect with and support other families, dedicate time for family activities and discussions, study scriptures, and pray together regularly. Of those members, how many are facing problems they can't handle on their own?
Okay, that's quite a list. Those are some pretty dedicated folks.
Yeah, he's talking about people who are really committed to their faith and their community.
So what did the stake presidents say?
Well, first they were kind of taken aback by the question.
I can imagine.
But then as they thought about it, they all realized the same thing. None of the members who were consistently engaged in those practices were being crushed by their problems.
Wow, that's amazing. So even in the middle of an economic crisis, these everyday actions really made a difference.
Exactly. It was like they had built up this spiritual and emotional shock absorber.
I love that analogy. So they were able to kind of bounce back from the hard times.
Precisely. And Clayton's point is that those consistent efforts created a type of resilience.
It's interesting, though, because the things he listed aren't just about being super religious or withdrawn from the world. There's a big emphasis on community and service, too.
Right. It's about recognizing that we're all connected, that by supporting others, we actually strengthen ourselves too.
That reminds me of the saying, a rising tide lifts all boats. But let's be, real life isn't about avoiding problems altogether. So how does this idea of building a finest home help us when those inevitable challenges do come knocking?
Well, it's not like these folks were immune to hardship. They still experienced job losses and financial stress.
Of course.
But they had cultivated something deeper, a sense of resilience, a strong support system, and this underlying belief that they weren't alone in their struggles.
It's like they had a more solid foundation to weather the storm.
Exactly.
And, this idea of building resilience through these kinds of practices, it's something that resonates even outside of a faith context, right?
Totally. Whether it's practicing gratitude or spending time in nature or connecting with loved ones, there are so many ways to build inner strength.
It's like building a personal toolkit for dealing with life's ups and downs.
I like the toolkit we can always be adding to.
So we've talked about building a strong foundation and about cultivating resilience. But I'm curious, does Clayton give any specifics about what a finest home actually looks like in practice?
He does, and it's actually really down to earth. He's not talking about picture-perfect families or mansions. He says, wherever you live, whatever your house looks like, and whatever the composition of your family, you can help build the finest home for your family.
That's kind of comforting to hear. It takes the pressure off, right?
For sure. It's not about outward appearances, but about those deeper connections.
It's about creating that sense of safety and love.
And everyone feeling supported.
Yeah, and that's something we all want, right? That sense of belonging, of being part of something bigger than ourselves.
And it's something we can create within our own homes.
Home isn't just a place, it's a feeling.
Beautifully said.
And we have the power to shape that feeling.
Absolutely.
So where do we go from here? How do we bridge the gap between this ideal and, the messiness of real life?
Well, this is where Clayton brings it back to that idea of the Savior being the ultimate engineer, builder, and interior designer of our souls.
Ah, okay.
He's saying that by striving to live by Christ's example, those qualities of love and forgiveness and resilience, well, they start to infuse our homes.
It's like we're always learning and growing and trying to be better.
Exactly. It's a journey.
A journey, not a destination.
It's about intentionally creating a space where everyone can thrive.
That's it.
And as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I'm wondering, what's one key takeaway you want our listeners to really ponder?
That's a good question. I think what strikes me most about Clayton's message is that building a finest home isn't about reaching some unattainable standard of perfection.
Okay.
It's about those small, consistent efforts we make every day.
To be a little bit kinder, a little more loving.
Exactly. It's those little things that really matter. It's those small moments that create something truly beautiful.
The tapestry of love and connection.
I love that. And before we move on to the final part of our conversation, I have a question for you and for our listeners. If Elder Clayton were to walk into your home today, what would he say impressed him most about how you're striving to create a finest home?
Wow, what a question.
It really gets you thinking, right? And we'll leave you with that to ponder as we head into the last part of our deep dive. That is a really powerful question. It makes you think about what you're prioritizing, right?
Yeah, it does. It's not about impressing anyone else.
Right.
It's about creating something genuine and meaningful within our own families.
And Clayton actually goes on to describe some of those small, everyday things that contribute to creating this kind of home.
He does. He talks about seemingly simple things like family meal times,
Oh, I love that.
right? Just sitting down together, sharing a meal, talking about your day.
It creates connection.
It does. And he also talks about family prayer.
Even if you're not religious, the idea of pausing together, expressing gratitude, reflecting on your day.
It can be really grounding.
Yeah.
It can create a sense of unity and purpose.
And he also emphasizes the importance of serving others as a family.
That's such a powerful one, right? Whether it's volunteering in your community or just doing something kind for a neighbor.
It helps you get outside of yourself.
It does. It teaches those values of compassion and empathy.
It's like you're building a family culture that's outward focused.
Exactly. And all of these things, they're not about being perfect.
Oh,
They're about effort
they're about showing up for each other.
and for the people around you.
As we're talking about all this, it strikes me that building a finest home is kind of like a lifelong project, right?
It is. It's a process of constant learning and growth.
And it's something that looks different for every family.
There's no one-size-fits-all blueprint.
And that's kind of beautiful, right?
Yeah, it is. It's about finding what works for you and your family.
And being willing to adjust and adapt along the way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because families change, circumstances change.
And the key is to keep coming back to those core principles.
Those foundational values that guide you.
Clayton doesn't offer easy answers or quick fixes,
He doesn't.
but he does offer a really powerful vision.
He does. And a lot of hope.
And I think that's what I find so compelling about his message. It's not about achieving some impossible ideal.
Right.
It's about those small, consistent efforts we make each day.
To create homes filled with love, laughter, and belonging.
I feel like we could talk about this forever, but we're going to have to wrap up our deep dive here.
Oh, I know.
But before we go, I want to remind everyone of that question we posed earlier.
The one about what Elder Clayton would say about our homes.
Yeah. What would he be most impressed by? What are those things, big or small, that you're doing to build a finest home for yourself and your loved ones?
Take some time to ponder that.
Because it's in those everyday moments that true beauty and strength are found.
Well said.
And until next time, keep seeking, keep building, and keep creating those homes that reflect the very best of who you are. See you on our next deep dive.